Hello and welcome to another To It For Media feature interview. I'm your host, Jhaka, and today we are talking everything Atlantic hurricane season because, of course, June 1st is the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season. In the building, we have Director of the Department of Disaster Management, Mr. Jasen Penn, and Meteorologist Andrew Jackson here to share some vital information with us. We have all that for you after this quick break.
The wait is over. CCT Fire is here. Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire. Bring it home and upgrade today.
At Higher BVI, we're not just about business. We're about empowering lives, and that is because we aspire to inspire. By choosing us, you're supporting a company that believes in equal opportunities, diversity, and community growth. Our mission goes beyond profit. It's about providing HR solutions, fostering talent, and leaving a positive impact. Join us in building a better future, a better BVI. Choose Higher BVI, where your support isn't just a transaction, it's a transformation. Together, we're changing lives in these beautiful Virgin Islands.
Welcome back and thank you so much for staying with us. Of course, as mentioned before the break, we have in the building Director of the Department of Disaster Management, Mr. Jasen Penn. Mr. Penn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, we would have had this conversation last year. Of course, the Atlantic hurricane season is back again, and we need to talk about preparedness. We need to talk about preparation. We need to talk about shelters. So I'm so happy you accepted our invitation to come here and have this discussion today.
Well, I'm glad that I could be here today with you. We would have heard from the forecast that we would have put out earlier this year, as well as the one that came out from the National Weather Service, indicating that the season would be above average. We've seen where some of them have predicted upwards of 28 named storms, 12 to 14 hurricanes, 7 or more major hurricanes. That is quite a bit that we may expect this season for 2024. And also, as we continue to say, it only takes one system to come in our direction and create extreme havoc, even a major disaster for us. So it's very critical that individuals pay attention to the information that's coming out. Don't take it for granted. Don't wait until the last minute. When you look at the National Hurricane Center, the satellite images, when you see everything lights up with all those colors coming across the Atlantic, and then people start to get agitated. No, that's not the time. Right now, when we look at it, it's clear. They're saying that not within the next 7 days, next 48 hours. We know that could change at short notice. However, because we are still not into the in-depth or the high point of the season, now is the time for us to begin our preparations.
Absolutely. And you mentioned that the information is out there. Let's talk about reliable sources of information, because a lot of the time in hurricane season, we see people sharing old videos, people sharing old articles, and it gets others concerned because when you see this information, video sharing on WhatsApp, it's difficult to verify them. But at least with the articles, you could check the dates. You could check the dates on posts. Could you just share with us some reliable sources of information about the hurricane season?
Certainly. Of course, I have to say the information that's coming from us comes from reliable sources, some that we contract, others that are in agreement based on international and I would say global standards. The National Hurricane Center, everyone in the region knows the National Hurricane Center. I should point out that the National Hurricane Center is the official hurricane forecasting agency for this region. Even though we have the satellite met offices throughout the region, throughout the Caribbean, the National Hurricane Center is the official source for hurricane forecasting. And usually what they do every year, even around this time, they collaborate with the various Met units or Met offices throughout the region. And that's where you see the information that this year might be general across the board, but as the systems get closer to the particular landmass or the particular area, that's where you have to pay attention to the official information that may be coming out from that particular meteorological office. As you could see, they even put within the disclaimer that you should use the information coming out from your local meteorological service
Yeah.
to make particular decisions. For us, for some time, the Antigua and Barbuda Meteorological Services has been the official force for presenting that type of information for the Virgin Islands. There's work in the background as being done to eventually move the Virgin Islands to a place where we are able to have our own, I would say, meteorological office. That would take some time, but there's works that is ongoing. But for now, the information that's coming out from us comes via the Antigua and Barbuda Meteorological Service, as well as via the National Hurricane Center. Of course, there are different sources that have information pertaining to weather images, their own take on things. I'm not discrediting those sources, but officially, when you're looking at it from the context from a legal standpoint,
Yeah.
the three sources that I mentioned, NHC, National Hurricane Center, Antigua and Bermuda Meteorological Service, as well as the information that's shared from us, disaster management, those are the three official sources for this year. I should also mention the National Weather Service out of San Juan. They do offer great information as well. They do the forecasting for the United States, Virgin Islands. And of course, that information can be a guide, but then it's not an official source
Yeah.
for the Virgin Islands.
Awesome. Very comprehensive in your response. And it's very important for people to note as well. I know it's one of those things when you think of the hurricane season, you immediately think, I should get a battery powered radio. Is that something that's still recommended in the current day?
Of course. I mean, one of the things that is great with using instrumentation or equipment such as battery power radios, they are low cost, they're easy to get your hands on.
Yep.
The battery power that's powering that radio, it can last for quite a bit of time. There's also the radios that have the crank winds, that if the battery power is to go dead, you could wind with your hand to power the unit. A lot of the units now are using solar capability. We have a lot of sun.
Yeah.
For if the conditions permit, that's also another option. We have, again, different radio stations that we use. We have the FM stations. We have the one major AM station that we tune into as well. One thing we were able to acquire as well for ourselves is I would say, an FM broadcast frequency, ZEOC. In an emergency, we would also bring that frequency up as well. We have a number of backup FM transmitters that we can use to help and augment and provide information. The frequency is 88.7 FM. It's a licensed frequency, licensed through the Telecoms Regulatory Commission, so it's not a pirated station. It's actually licensed. But yeah, we have the radios. People could use those for preparations. There are even the small handheld radios. They could use them among, we call them walkie-talkies, but handheld radios. Families can purchase various amounts of them if they're within line of sight of each other.
And they could use them if telephone lines go down.
Yeah, they can use them if the lines go down. For those who might be a little bit more high-tech, and I guess that can afford certain things, they can also get satellite phones, satellite communications. They could use that as well. There's different packages that they could use for that. Some of these particular satellite instrumentation does have the ability to allow you to have internet access. Again, for those who can afford, they could have that as a backup means. We'd also have, our telecom providers would have done a lot in terms of their best, in terms of preparation by having a lot of their cabling and everything. Some of them having them on the
Buried,
ground,
yeah.
having them buried. That's in a sense so that winds and poles and everything else would not take the communications down. You would have seen too, even during that period, a mom of them would have had um, I would think these type of mobile units that they could use in the event that they could put up just for temporarily to try and ensure that communications is back up. So I strayed a bit in terms from the commercial side of the telecom service providers, but just to reiterate, bringing us back into what the homeowners can have, you don't forget, again, your AM, FM radio. You can have your satellite phones. You could have your you could have your walkie-talkie radios, as you may say. Don't forget your batteries. Don't forget your power chargers. Those rock pretty well.
Yeah.
You even have them now where you can have the same outdoor solar charger that could
Yes.
charge that up, that could keep all your phones and everything else, could keep them charged. And there's also other low-end equipment such as I would think that it's like a satellite type messaging system, and even some of the radios that I mentioned, some of them
Yeah.
have that capability to where if their families are within close distance, they could create small networks where they could still communicate. But that's from the communication standpoint. There are other things that we'll discuss that they should do to prepare, not just based on the communications, but other things as well.
Of course, and hand in hand with preparing comes planning, because you need to have a plan on how you're going to prepare, on what you're going to get. So let's dive into planning. Let's talk about household plans. Because a lot of the time we hear people talk about, oh, you need to have a plan for the hurricane season. You need to have a plan for this. You need to have a plan for that. Some people don't know what that plan looks like. So what would you recommend that people do to get that plan going so that their family isn't left in a scramble if there's a storm approaching?
What I would say, while we are now in peacetime, at our department, there are various templates that people can get. bviddm.com, www.bviddm.com. You can go to our website. There's an area for publications they can visit. There are templates for plans, and it would actually tell them how to, how to develop a plan. And their plan could be multi-hazard. It doesn't have to be for hurricanes alone. It could be for floods. It could be fire. It could be for any assortment of things, even earthquakes. And pretty much a simple plans is just ensuring that there's like different checklists or different procedures that you would take with your household to ensure that you're ready. Your plan may include the medications you need to secure. It may include what the kids need to do in terms of you're responsible for securing the shoes or gathering all the canned foods. Mom might be responsible for ensuring that everyone has a particular number of items that are important to them. She may be the one that's securing a lot of the documents within plastic folders, or even if she's tech savvy, loading them up somewhere on the cloud or having them on a backup drive. That role within this plan may be within a certain time frame. Now is the time for him to check the shutters if you have. If you don't have shutters, to ensure that we have the sandbags, ensure that we have the sand, ensure that the car is filled with fuel, ensure that he's the one that might go around the yard, checking the yard, checking the windows, might be the one checking the roofs. I would say it's very important for checking the roofs. I think not this season, but last season, when I myself checked my roof, I realized there was some works that was needed to be done. Good thing I checked. Which I should, but I did. And I did realize early on that there was some works needed to be done, even though from the onset the roofs look good. So I say all that to say if there's a plan that the entire family is involved in that everyone knows what the plan is. What I just mentioned is just from the preparation standpoint, but the plan, of course, would have different phases to it. It could be pre, it could be during, and it could be after. And then afterwards, the plan, the kids may know what the plan is. If, for instance, this happens, you will go with maybe auntie or neighbor, a plan for ahead of time, things that you need to critically to work with. Remember to work with your books. The smaller kids, you might need to have. The plan may include things that we tend to forget, the particular toy, a particular blankie, or whatever it is, in order to keep that child comforted. All that could be within the plan. And everyone should know what's in the plan, even to the small one, and the plan should be exercised with the household. That at some point, again, right now we're in peacetime, where we can sit down as a family and said, if this happens, what are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? And we hash it and test it out and see where you might need to make changes or corrective actions to ensure that it functions accordingly. But I should emphasize, now is the time things are quiet. We have the templates. Call us, check us out. We have different persons who can assist. If you develop a plan, you want us to look at it, give us some pointers, that could be done as well. It can also be done for commercial businesses also, because we've done it for those also.
Okay. And another important part of the plan would be to plan for evacuation, especially for people who live in low-lying areas that may be victims of flooding, people who might not have had a chance to maybe check their roof and it becomes compromised during a storm. So a plan to evacuate your home. How would you recommend they go about doing that? And is there a template on the DDM's website or resources regarding shelters?
Yes. In terms of evacuation or even evacuation planning, we have resources that produce maps, or even there are maps that are already pre-produced. If persons want copies, maybe to see their home and to see what's the best evacuation route out of their home. We have something called a hazard vulnerability assessment, which we do for residential and commercial. That's another great thing as well. It sort of tells you what your particular hazard your home may be vulnerable to. And if it is, you're worried about storm surge or flooding, it will indicate that particular hazard as well. And getting back to the particular maps, yes, the maps would map out and be able to show you the evacuation zones. Now is the time for you to figure out exactly, if you were to evacuate, what routes you might take, what alternative routes you can take if this particular route is compromised. What you would also need to do now at this point is figure out maybe your emergency shelters. Pretty much the first thing is that most persons would prefer to stay at home. Everyone would prefer to stay at their home and shelter in place. But if you can't, one of the other alternatives that we usually ask persons, if they do have family members that are willing to house them in evacuation, that could be one of the means of their first line of evacuation. Because of course you would be within a vicinity of persons that you know, be a little bit more comfortable with, and you'd be at a little bit more peace of mind. If you don't have that particular option, the thing would be now is to look at the shelter listing. The shelter listing is published on our website. The shelters have been checked, but I think the most recent list should be coming out shortly, but the other list is still valid. You will look at that particular shelter listing, look at the location where you live, make sure you understand where the shelters are, review or take a look at that particular shelter, try to get an idea if we had to move, which particular shelter that we would use for safekeeping. One of the things that I should mention too also, if it does come to a point where you have to evacuate and go into a shelter, you should be prepared at least maybe for the first 48 hours or so, is to have some type of food items, drinking water. You'd have to, ensure you have certain utensils, your blankets, your pre-done or pre-packed grab bag might be something too that persons could have had pre, which will make it easier for them that you have a particular amount of supplies with you when going, if the decision is made to go into a shelter, until other arrangements can be made to get you food and so forth. And another important thing that you should have within that particular kit or whatever when you move into a shelter, if you're someone that relies on medication, don't forget to check on your medication now while it's peacetime. Don't wait until the last minute when you see that, again, as I mentioned, the systems start moving off the Atlantic. You're trying to get to the pharmacy, you're trying to get your medication filled, only to realize that the stock is gone because persons might be thinking the same as you. Go at the same time, use the same dose, and now there's none for you to get.
Yeah.
So now is the time to check on all those things. Make sure it's in your kit or even in your plan, and go ahead and have those things ready.
Now, I always appreciate the fact that you're adamant about involving children in the process and having young children involved and understanding of what's going on. Could you just expand a bit on the importance of involving children in these processes, answering their questions, and making sure that they know the plan as well?
Yes. Our young ones, whether you believe it or not, they could become stressed just as the adults. They're young, not really sure what's going on. Certain terms or certain things or certain images that we see where we take it for granted, not knowing that they could be traumatized by some of these images. I believe by having them involved from the inception of even explaining to them what a hurricane is, what a storm is, why we are doing the kit, bring them along, get them their little kit too, let them pack their little kit, explain to them why the importance of their having their kit, getting their input even when you're doing it. Hey, what do you think we should put in here? What do you see needs to go in your kit? And get them engaged. Make sure you have games for them. Make sure that the information that you're giving to them, the coloring books, there's different things that they can use that could also help to educate them. Tell them to draw what you think is a hurricane. Draw an image of a hurricane for me, and try to explain to them this is what the hurricane does and this is what it causes, and now this is what we're supposed to do in order to safeguard ourselves from the hurricane. Within our website as well, there's also information that parents can use in order to assist the youngsters in understanding not just the hurricanes. I mean, we are speaking on the hurricane season, but other hazards. But we stick to hurricanes because right now that's what we're dealing with for the season coming up. We do have templates, we do have information that would help parents to sort of, I would say, to assist the young ones in being able to cope during a hurricane. As well as I know other counterparts, the social development, the Red Cross, they also do a lot. The other departments, family support, they do have information and they do a lot as well. Or even some of our, believe it or not, a lot of our private sector, Rotary clubs, Lion clubs, the different organizations, they too are doing a lot to lend assistance, and they do have information in abundance to help in regards to the youngsters. But from our standpoint, our resources on our websites or checking in with our office, we do have a host of information that we can use to ensure that our youngsters have the opportunity to be involved and ready to go for the season as well.
All right. Well, very well put, Mr. Penn. Any final words?
Final words, I think I said it in my opening. It only takes for one major hurricane to cause an extreme disaster. Some of us would have experienced Hurricane Irma/Maria. We saw the devastation that caused. That was like almost 7 years ago. Yeah. Just to reiterate again about the season being a very active one, and we really want persons to begin their preparations and making sure that their plans and everything are in place, checking their homes, ensuring that they have insurance, or even looking at the insurance policies. That's something I should have mentioned that we tend to take for granted. And be as ready as they can as the season unfolds. Like everyone else, I would just hope, I'll pray that we don't have to initiate a lot of these plans and different things that we are developing, but we still owe it to ourselves to be prepared in the event it does. So my take on leaving here this afternoon is that persons should begin to make those preparations while it's quiet, while we're not in the high point of the season, so that they're not panicking when the systems start to move off the Atlantic.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
And viewers, of that, we head to a quick break. When we return, we touch base with meteorologist Andrew Jackson.
Yo, everything good, Dad?
Why? This thing got me one way, Daddy.
What you mean?
Ever since I hook up with this thing, can't eat, I can't sleep. This is the first thing I touch it when I reach home.
What you really? Hey, this ain't like you,
Dad, this thing got me staying home, keeping out that trouble me.
Wow. What your name is?
Shit, I talking about my CCT life.
Don't worry about missing your favorite series, sports, news, and local programming. Come to CCT today and sign up for CCT Live to access over 80 channels. CCT Live. Bring it home.
1 month free trial turn into 5. 5 months turn into, well, you know I huff. I watching ball. I been watching football. Dad, Nickelodeon, Paw Patrol. I am hooked. Hook, I tell you.
Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. As promised before the break, right now we are on set with meteorologist Andrew Jackson. Andrew, thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Now, this is a very important conversation that's about to happen, because I know I speak for a lot of people across the Caribbean that when they heard this year's the hurricane season is expected to be very active, that came with a bit of concern, a bit of fear for some. So what exactly is the outlook for this year, and what is really meant by active?
Okay. Good afternoon again, everyone. Before I even go into the outlook, Jhaka, how do you feel about this year's hurricane season?
All right. So personally, though, I'm not used to being the one answering questions, but personally, I'm concerned. I'm someone who looks a lot into climate change and climate justice and what exactly is going on, and the storms are getting worse.
True.
So when you've had over the last decade some of the worst storms ever seen, ever recorded, hearing this year that the season is expected to be highly active comes with the worry of, oh, are we about to see 7 of these extremely strong storms? Are the storms going to get worse? It's a lot of unknowns, and especially with the weather that can change so quickly.
That is true.
It's a lot to try to grasp.
Well, now is a good time to transition that fear, that being worried, into being ready. We do expect an active season. The National Hurricane Center has predicted between 17 to 25 named storms, 8 to 13 that could become hurricanes, and 4 to 7 that could become major hurricanes. To also add to that, there are 23 other agencies that actually had forecasts, and they are all predicting to have over the average amount of hurricanes. Now you ask the question, what does active mean? It usually would have to be measured against something, and that would have been an average for a period of years, and that average is usually, for a year like this, it would have been 14 named systems, 7 hurricanes, 3 that could become major hurricanes. Now, let us go back to the NHC forecast. 17 to 25. That's a lot. However, I will keep reiterating, let us be ready. Now is the good, or rather the best time for us to do all this that we need to get done.
Of course, an even better time would have been before the start of the hurricane season, but at least we still do have some time before the season gets to its most active period.
And that is true. And the thing about it is, the difference between this year and last year are the driving factors. Last year we had El Nino and the warm sea surface temperatures, and there was a bit of a toss-up between whether it was going to be near normal, above average, and that was mainly because the factors were acting against each other. Now this year, the factors will be working together because the driving factors this year were mainly the La Nina and the same sea surface temperatures that are abnormally high. And the sea surface temperatures actually provide that fuel that the hurricanes or the storms or the depression or whatever system it might be to develop. And the thing about it is these oceans have been warming up for a while. So the heat is not just at the surface, it goes deep. And what that means is that when a hurricane or a system passes, even if it churns up the water that's at the surface, it still has more warmth, and that is a call for concern because that could lead to the whole rapid intensification. And I think that is what a case that happened with Irma. Irma kind of just blew up in a short period of time. And as I mentioned, the other factor is the La Nina effect. Now, I won't go into the deep details of the science, but in regards to the Atlantic Basin, what it does, it provides a stable enough atmosphere that doesn't bother the development of the system. So what it does, it allows that system to grow. So just imagine you have a system that wants to develop, it has everything to develop, and you make it just perfect for them. It will flourish. And that is why there's this level of excitement for the professionals, and I guess fear for the average person. But I want us to redirect that fear. Let us not be in a relaxed or what would I say, a worrying state. I want for us to transition all those emotions into acting. Let us take them to be more proactive so that we can act. We don't want to worry and be here, and then after, say, a system comes up, we end up reacting. Because we might not react in the way that would necessarily be beneficial to us. Nature has already given us here in the territory a dry run. Earlier this month, we see where we had flood event. And that first week thereabout, and it didn't take long for it to happen. And also, it wasn't even a system per se. It wasn't a hurricane. It was not tropical depression.
It was a trough, right?
Right.
Could you just explain what exactly a trough system is without getting too technical?
The long and short of it is a trough is an area of disturbance, sometimes associated with fronts and things like that. But what happened in our case is that there was a surge of moisture that was coming from the southern area of the basin that actually got in that period of time that we had the rainfall, it interacted with that trough. So it's almost like a situation like it just blew up. And that happened for like probably under an hour. And we had areas where we had 5 inches of rainfall, 4 inches of rainfall.
Meanwhile, not so far away in the Eastern Caribbean, the lower Eastern Caribbean, there's no rain at all.
Right. And that is the thing. So we have to be in a situation where let us be proactive. I know the season is not here yet. There are no warnings out yet. There hasn't been so much activity out yet. And now is a good time to do everything. You understand? We might not have a lot of time because in the sense of last year, where the season, where the condition was not so, what you call it, active as we are expecting for this year. In June, we had 3 systems already. June is when? A few days away. So we have to act now if it means we have to get the necessary supplies. Even the plans that the director spoke about, it's good to have the plan, but we also need to know what the plan is. What do we do? You have to execute that plan, practice it, so that when the event that something does happen, we can act. We want to be proactive so that we can act. We don't want to be just relaxed and end up reacting.
Very important message. Of course, we'll be hearing from you again throughout the hurricane season because it's very important information for the public to have.
And the thing about it is, even though we're in the season, it doesn't only involve hurricanes and all of that. Because usually, once a system moves through, it tends to move with a lot of the moisture.
Yeah.
And that leaves behind dry air, hot conditions. And that is also something that we need to prepare for as well. So even though we're talking about flooding and all of that, we need to consider the season as a whole package. You understand? So I will keep repeating, it doesn't even need to take a system to cause devastation. So we cannot necessarily wait on a hurricane watch or a tropical storm watch. We have to act now. We have to act now. And the thing is, we expect the peak to be in like September thereabout, but that doesn't mean we can have a lot of name system before that.
Yeah.
So let us be mindful. I mean, we are all humans and we are concerned and we have feelings. But let us try to channel those feelings into proactive actions so that we can be able to deal with whatever situation as they arise.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Mr. Jackson.
You're most welcome.
And of course, thank you viewers for joining us today. Stay tuned to 284 Media throughout the 2024 hurricane season as we do our best to bring you vital information, of course, with the hand of the Department of Disaster Management. I'm Jhaka and I really hope that you stay tuned to 284 Media for more great content.